This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. We tell you what you need to know, follow up on the context of those stories, and help each other understand.
Today, I'll interview Jason Howell about what it's like to become an independent creator.
Okay,
and we got some good stuff in your emails.
That's right. I am Jason Howell, the guy Tom just mentioned. Yeah,
I'm Tom Merritt.
Let's start with what you need to know with the big story. Mark Gurman. You know Mark Gurman. He's that guy over at Bloomberg that always has the big scoops. Well, he has a big story today that details a major change coming to iOS and macOS later this year. iPhone, iPad, and Mac all set to receive a major software redesign. And the goal here is to bring consistency, to bring simplicity to the platform. At least this is according to Gurman's sources. Included will be a redesign of most major OS elements. So things like menus, windows, buttons, icons, apps even. And the redesign is noted to be at least partially based on the Vision Pro's software approach. So the Vision Pro hasn't been, a huge moneymaker, but made some interesting design changes and choices in how the operating system goes. So some of that might come in. On mobile, the changes will be introduced with iOS 19 and iPad OS 19. That is codenamed Luck, by the way. Gurman says the changes to iPhone alone will mark the first time since iOS 7. That's back in 2013. So we're talking, 12 years ago?
Yeah.
That the platform will see this level of revision. And then on the Mac side, macOS 16 is codenamed Cheer. That will bring the first round of major design and aesthetic changes to the Mac desktop experience, of course, laptops and all that, since the release of Big Sur in 2020, which feels like 12 years ago because of the pandemic. These separate revisions will actually tie into each other, and that's a big part of the reason why they're doing this. Even if the architecture of iOS and macOS is quite different, a big goal here is to redesign with unification of the two systems in mind so that they look and they operate alike, kind of keeping even some of the smaller details consistent between them. That's a huge goal here. And Gurman says that we should expect to learn about all of these changes, of course, at Apple's WWDC conference, currently expected to take place this June. I don't think Apple's officially announced that yet, but that seems to be when they do it every year. And as for another reason why Apple is choosing to do this now, well, it's not just, hey, it would look nice. The report mentions lagging sales growth and a slow recovery from the drop that was tied to the pandemic 5 years ago. The company had seen an initial surge in sales post-pandemic, and then beyond that, growth has moved slowly ever since. So that's where we're at. I use Mac OS. I don't really use iOS devices necessarily, but I know you do. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, so I went on a journey when I saw this story. Gurman's always reliable, so I consider this a leak, not a rumor. That doesn't mean it's guaranteed to happen because plans can change, but Gurman usually has good ideas of what is the state of things at the moment. So I believe this. At first, I was afraid, oh no, don't change everything around. I hate it when they change everything around and you have to relearn everything. And then when you got to the parts about remember when they changed iOS 7 in 2013? I'm like, sort of, kind of. Yeah. I don't remember it being a problem. Same thing for Big Sur in 2020. I'm like, oh, right. I kind of forgot they changed that around. So I'm not expecting this to be much more than making everything a little more consistent, which they've been slowly moving towards doing anyway.
Yeah,
they have been adding, an app store. They've been, giving you the ability to mirror things from your iPhone into Mac OS. And then the next thing I thought was, well, wait a minute. Really, it doesn't matter what the operating system is. It's about the interface. So as long as they don't mess up macOS's ability to do multitasking, which is something that phones don't do as well, then I'm fine with that. I'm fine if they make all of the icons have similarly rounded corners and folders and all of that. I don't care if Eufy or BIOS is running, behind the scenes. Why should I care if it's macOS or iOS, as long as it's usable? And I'll give Apple credit for that. They are usually usable.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because when I was reading through this, not, as a non-iOS user, what this kind of reminded me of is the conversation that has been around for so long in Android, which is like, when is Android and Chrome going to combine? Or when is Google going to get rid of Chrome OS and, base their laptop operating system experience on Android? And so this kind of reminds me of that in the sense that like they're taking these two separate, but, still part of the same ecosystem, even if they aren't driven by the same architecture operating systems, and making them at least feel and seem like they belong to the same Marvel universe. But what I wonder, and the question that comes up, and I think I know how I feel about this answer, but at that point, does it make sense to combine the OSs, or do two separate OSs by Apple deserve to exist because they serve two completely different purposes?
I mean, honestly, I have the same answer for Chrome OS and Android, which I use Chrome OS every day myself. And I have an Android phone that I use quite frequently. I don't care. This goes back to my Eufy BIOS thing. Like, as long as it works, don't change your desktop formula to be like mobile, because I don't want that on the desktop. I want to be able to have 16 overlapping windows. I want to be able to quickly move between things. There are different needs I have when I'm using a desktop form factor than I have when I'm using a touchscreen, single screen form factor. And I think they've done a lot of work on iPad to split the difference. So maybe that's an indication of where we're going, right? I could see them changing things on the desktop that people will hate, and I hope they don't do that. But if they're just putting a coat of paint that says like, the visual style, the language of where things are, we've added files to iPhone, we're going to add, a different kind of foldering option for you on macOS, that's fine. I don't use those kinds of things on macOS that they've added so far, but as long as they don't get in my way, I don't mind if they change the visual style. And it doesn't matter to me whether the underlying operating system is compiling things in one way or another, as long as the apps run.
Yeah. So what you're saying is Apple is returning to skeuomorphism of the early 2010s, and that's okay. We should all be okay with that.
I want to see.
By the way, that is not in the report at all.
Animated icons of reel-to-reel tapes when I press record.
Because that's the only way I'm going to understand that we're recording audio when I look at a touchscreen interface. I think the only other question real quick I have on this is I have used the Apple Vision Pro very briefly. I went into the Apple Store a couple of months ago and used it for like an hour, got the demo and everything. And the report definitely mentions that some of the visual touches of Vision OS, are likely to at least make their way into this redesign. And I don't know how much experience you've had with it, but of course, Apple Vision Show exists on the DTNS network. So maybe you know the answer to this or have an idea, but like, what would that mean? Like, is it like circular icons, or does it go deeper than that in your mind? Yeah,
circular icons is the big thing. Transparent, frames around windows, and being able to see what's behind, stuff like that. Being able to pin things in space. I don't know how that translates to my iPhone necessarily, but if mostly what they're doing is unifying the Apple Vision OS features that work on a non-volumetric display, that's cool. There's some cool stuff in there. It's nothing that I consider revolutionary, but again, I don't use it every day, like you said. So if anybody out there does, let us know. feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com.
Love it.
In fact, DTNS is made possible by you. We have a free version with ads, but the Patreon is really what powers this show. So big thanks to everybody who supports us there, including Dale Mulcahy, Matt Zaglin, Jeff Wilkes, and our brand new patrons. We got so many of them, Jason. Kathleen, Don, Ben, Kenny, Elizabeth, and Julie. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Good weekend of patrons joining. So appreciate that. Patreon.com/DTNS.
There's so much more we need to know. And our proof is that we're going to tell you about it right now in the briefs.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right now. Counterpoint Research published a report that shows a dramatic, is it dramatic? Dun, dun, dun. 7% drop in smartwatch shipments in 2024. I don't know. It's sort
dramatic.
it's kind of
dramatic for the fact that it's the first ever time for the market that it's happened.
Yeah, it's the heel turn of the smartwatch market. First ever drop for the market. So that is dramatic. You're right. Apple still leads through its shipments, though its shipments fell 19% for the year due to a decline in basic smartwatch users choosing to upgrade. Huawei held on to the second spot with an increase of 35% in shipments worldwide. That of course, is partly because Huawei is re-entering the world market after having to retrench. Right. And the winner chicken dinner of fastest growth goes to Xiaomi, which saw an impressive 135% growth, contributing to China breaking its record for highest ever shipments.
Oh, there should be a medal for that. We'll send it to you, Xiaomi. Microsoft has announced the end of the road for remote desktop app for Windows, which will take place actually on May 27th. So put that on your calendar. They have warned of its demise since late last year. Users are instead encouraged to use the new Windows app. It's called that, Windows app, which first launched last September. You'll get continued access to Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop, Microsoft DevBox, and the new app also offers customizable home screens, multi-monitor support, dynamic display resolutions. So in other words, there's plenty of reason to move over now. You're not really losing out on very much in the process.
They're not getting rid of remote desktop functions.
Right. Just the app.
They're just switching apps.
There you go.
Yeah. Microblogging platform X went down Monday, and as many of you know, we don't cover outages on Daily Tech News Show because they're usually resolved by the time people hear our show, and they usually don't have interesting causes. But this is X, so a lot of you on the subreddit really expressed interest in the story. We got like 10 times the usual votes on this. So here is what we know about the X outage. It was a denial of service attack, and ex-owner Elon Musk told Fox News, quote, "We don't know exactly what happened."
Okay.
There we go. That's what we know about the X. He said a lot of other stuff.
Right.
A lot of other stuff where he's like, I don't know, it might be this. I think it's this.
It might be conjecture,
but
speculation.
But he literally said, we don't know exactly what happened. And
that's a fact.
Yeah.
There you go. Apple is set to force its home app users to upgrade to new HomeKit architecture after making it optional to do that upgrade with iOS 16. 9to5Mac spotted code in iOS 18.4 beta 3, so they've been sleuthing a little bit. This code hints at the app's interoperability with the old HomeKit architecture that's signaling the change. The new architecture does have some downsides, breaking support for older versions of iOS and macOS running the Home app as one of them. There is no word yet on when this requirement might be enacted, though it's possible it'll roll out with iOS 19 later this year.
Yeah, I don't know this for sure, but I suspect a lot of this has to do with Matter compatibility. Because as all of these platforms switch to Matter compatibility, there's just certain things they used to do that don't work anymore.
Right.
So it would make sense if that's part of this.
Still worth doing, yeah.
Blue Sky is rolling out support for 3-minute videos. That is an upgrade from the current limit of 1 minute, so 3 times as long.
Yay.
Also rolling out with version 1.99 is a new chat request feature for protecting your direct messages with a new approve and reject system. Blue Sky is also bringing the ability to mute an account into the 3-dot menu, which is attached to a user's post, which makes it easier to do. You don't have to dig around for it.
Yeah, you used to have to go to their profile and explicitly go there. And now if you see the message and you just want to do it, well, it's 3 dots away. Boop. Microsoft is working on a new Xbox branded gaming handheld codenamed Keenan with an expected launch of 2025. So this year, this is according to an exclusive by Windows Center. Developed in partnership with an unnamed PC gaming OEM, the system will likely run Windows and feature the Microsoft Store and PC Game Pass, along with compatibility with platforms like Steam. Microsoft is also, by the way, hard at work on successors to the Xbox Series X and S. You can imagine that they would be, with both of those expected to release sometime in 2027.
This makes so much sense. I can't believe I didn't predict it before. When you look at how Microsoft does tablets and laptops where they make Surface versions, but then they encourage people to do other form factors. And if they look at the handheld and they're like, you know what? we don't have the expertise to do this yet, but we have the information from mobile gaming and Azure and all of this to inform a partner. Let them make it and make it really well. Good move, I would think.
Yeah.
Also,
Indeed.
maybe it's Kenan Thompson from Saturday Night Live.
Or Keenan Ivory Waynes.
Or it could be Keenan Ivory Waynes. A lot of Keenans out there. You
Just
don't know
saying.
which one.
Yeah.
Starting Wednesday, Waymo is expanding. This is what I've been looking for, Jason, is the sort of acceleration of the expansion of one of these autonomous taxi services. Waymo is going to offer its 24-hour autonomous taxi service in Mountain View, Los Altos, Palo Alto, and parts of Sunnyvale, California. That's all quote-unquote Silicon Valley. Waymo launched last week in Austin. It's launching in Miami soon in partnership with Nigeria's Move. And it's got other plans on the docket to go to more cities over the next year. So we may be seeing Waymo become the first of these services to become widespread, where most people in most cities anyway would be able to hail a Waymo, maybe in the, at least in the United States, within the next couple of years.
Yeah. Waymo coming to Waymo places.
Thank you. I was going to do that if you didn't, so I appreciate it.
All right. I was like, is that too obvious? And obviously it was too obvious.
It's necessary, I think.
But necessary,
people would be
yes.
wondering why one of us didn't say it.
Google is introducing a new Add to Calendar button in Gmail, so look for it. Emails that Gmail identifies as potentially benefiting from this shortcut will surface that button up there. When you click it, the button opens a Gemini prompt window to confirm the addition of those event details into your calendar. Previously, Gemini could add events to the calendar, but this new process is just a little more automated, though users may still need to click to confirm the addition. So much that's happening with like these AI integrated features. It's like it does all these things for you, but you still need to go in and check and say yes. So, it's not totally automated, but it's closer. And I think it's a good thing, personally.
It is. I had the exact same thought, which is like, I am going to double check this every time I try it.
Absolutely.
Just to make sure it got everything right. And if it gets everything right regularly, I'll start to use it. Otherwise, I probably won't.
That's the way it goes. It's the way the AI world turns. And those are the essentials for today. Let's dive a little deeper into the ongoing stories and follow up with me.
Yes. So I've been wanting to do this for a while, and we had a little room in the schedule today. So we jumped on it. Jason made the jump to indie content creation last year, and of course now has done a CES and a Mobile World Congress, as well as launching several shows and joining me here on Daily Tech News Show. So I thought it'd be good to sort of compare notes and how you're feeling and how is it going. So how is it going?
Oh, how is it going? Honestly, I'm feeling way more Waymo. Sorry. Hopeful and optimistic about where I'm at in 2025 versus 2024. 2024 was the year, of course, that I started doing the independent thing after working full time for Twit. And then before that for CNET. My total paradigm in being an adult, professional in the technology journalism industry has been working with a team that supports me and does the things that I don't necessarily always want to do. When you go independent, you got to do it all, as you well know, Tom, and you've built up a really solid foundation around you. Maybe someday I will get to that point as well, and we can compare even more notes. But last year was all about throwing almost literal spaghetti at the wall and just seeing what kind of things worked for others, what kind of things worked for me, what kind of things I didn't want to do anymore, that sort of stuff. And this year has really been about doubling down on the things I know are working, and really at the end of the day about doing what I have to do to make a paycheck, which is not to say that I'm selling my soul, but it is looking through responsible lens at the last year and going, okay, these things have potential here. I need to focus more of my effort on these things. And I think that's how you run a business, right? It's my first time running a business, so I'm learning as I go.
Yeah. I see a couple of different paths that people take, and it usually has to do with how much help will they need and accept that they need when they go independent. Sure. And like you said, I've been lucky enough to get really good people around me to help. But it was something that I jumped onto early. Back when I started Daily Tech News Show, I was like, oh, I don't want to book everyone all the time. And so I was lucky enough to get Jenny Josephson to jump in and help me out. And then I was like, well, I want to have a regular host that I don't have to think about or book someone in and try to coach them along and teach them the show. And so we did the Patreon where we got regular people showing up. And that's kind of how I did it. But it was me looking out and going, I don't want to do this alone. Whereas other people like Justin Robert Young, they do it alone for as long as possible and then finally go, you know what? Actually, it would be helpful to get an editor. And then, you know what? It would be helpful to get a booker and stuff like that. Do you have a sense of what path you seem like you might be veering towards?
Yeah, I'm really happy you asked that question because it's certainly something that's been on my mind. I mean, what I recognize and what I see in what you were just talking about is the fact that like there is only so much time. Like, and that's not like that's a whoa, I've never heard that before sort of recognition. But when you're working for yourself, I have felt like I feel that on a completely different level. I have X amount of time during my day outside of my familial responsibilities and everything else that, we all have going on in our lives. I have a certain amount of time with which to do the things that hopefully, earn me a living. And if I'm spending all my time doing all my things, that ultimately means I can do less things. And so I'm kind of at a point right now where I really want to, I'm kind of in the process of building something around me so that I can start to take some of my tasks and offload them. Because at the end of the day, I believe, I don't know if this is, I wouldn't say this is a tested theory or not, but, for me anyways, but I believe that if I can put more content out, be it writing, because, I'm writing for ZDNet and Digital Trends and Micro Center now on top of the podcast that I'm doing on top of the YouTube channel, like I'm very busy. If I am freed up from the things that I don't necessarily want to do or the things that take a lot of time to do, to just focus on the thing that I think I'm best at, which is focusing on content, which is writing scripts and, hosting or talking with people on podcasts, like that's the stuff that's going to get people to go, oh, I like that guy. I like what he's doing. I want to see more of it. Not the fact that I spent 8 hours editing a video behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely at a point right now where, the challenge there though, is that I can only really do that when I'm making enough money to be able to afford to shave off some to give to somebody in order to do that. And I also have to find someone that I trust to do it in kind of my style and my voice. And I'm kind of still largely developing my style and voice in the current paradigm.
Yeah. There's a bit of a math equation of if I pay this person to do this part of the job, will that free me up enough to make more than that amount?
There you go.
Of
Nailed
money?
it.
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, I'm sure I will have.
There's never an answer to that question. It all depends, but it is something that is going to be tailored to every single person's situation, which leads me to the last question I wanted to ask you about, which is platforms. When I went independent, it was 2014. Patreon was brand new, less than a year old. It was a puppy. And podcasting had been around, but it hadn't quite taken off the way it is now. You certainly didn't have Spotify involved in it. Nowadays, you've got TikTok, you've got YouTube in a whole different way than you had back then. How are you finding that as a person who's not entering in their 20s, and realizing, okay, I have to play in a bunch of pools that we didn't have to play in when we were new to this business?
I mean, I think that's exactly it. Another big part of the last year has been doing my best to be everywhere, which, as we already said, takes a lot of time and effort in order to do, but doing my best to be everywhere so that I can locate where are the wheres that I should be going forward. And I still don't know exactly what my answer is there. Of course I'm on, I'm promoting on TikTok and Blue Sky and Mastodon and Threads. And then I've got an Instagram and a TikTok for short form. And then I've got my YouTube channel for short form and long form. I only just in Mobile World Congress, I posted a video a short form video on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. And I got my first kind of viral video on Instagram. It's pushing 1 million at this point, which is the first time that's ever happened to me. And, I saw my Instagram follower count, which has never been that high, jump from 1,000 to like 4,500 because of one video. And so now it's just interesting because I now feel kind of a responsibility to feed that beast,
right.
Which, as we're talking about, that's just takes more attention. It takes more strategizing. Right now, my strategy is to try my best to be in all the places, to support them enough to make them valuable and worth it for people that follow me there. And then I might hit a point. I might actually hit a point to where I'm like, you know what? I've determined that these are the 3 things that I do. And I have to let the other ones go because it may make more sense to focus on what's working than to spread myself too thin, all in the name of like, I don't want to leave anyone out. Like it, there's only so much me to go around, as you well know.
It's a dopamine hit to get that many views and follows.
For sure.
It may or may not translate into anything else. And
no.
You have to make that decision. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's not like my YouTube channel saw some big influx in subscribers, which is kind of like my primary, for my video content, my primary monetization, kind of area aside from the podcast work that I do. So it's not like an Instagram video reaching 1 million views does anything for that. But did it open up a pathway for Instagram? Does that then enable me to figure out how to monetize on Instagram? And if so, like, I'll take it. Like, to round this out, I think what I've realized in the last year and a half is I don't need to look for one particular direction to be the source of my kind of ability to generate income and create a career. Multiple streams of income. And the more that I focus on that and lean into that, the more it seems to be working for me right now. And so I'm really,
Jason,
really
thank you
for that.
Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, dude. So happy to be with you.
To find more of what you do, where should they go?
YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search for Jason Howell. I mean, or just find me on any social network and you'll find links to my stuff. Or listen to Daily Tech News Show Briefing because I'm here every Tuesday and Thursday.
Yay. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. That was a lot of fun. What do you want to hear us talk about on the show? Maybe not always me. What else? Well, one way you can let us know is on our subreddit. Submit stories and vote on them at reddit.com/r/Daily Tech News Show.
We end every episode of DTNS with some shared wisdom. Today, we hear from Norm and Adon Jr.
All right. First up, in response to Dr. Nikki's update, Norm wrote, "Thanks for the update. It's tough to keep up with all the news out there, and happy DTNS is keeping an eye out." You bet.
I sent that to Nikki. She'll feel good about that. And Adon Jr. Had some further thoughts on that update as well. This might be a good time to pause and consider just how fad-driven funding has become. I don't blame the researchers playing creative descriptions and keyword stuffing to attempt to boost rankings in the quest for funding. It was DEI recently, but certainly not the first. The ham-handed approach to pruning the studies is also a problem, but not for the people who get what they're looking for by keyword trimming and fast action. In the end, like a great many things, what are we rewarding and what are we getting versus what we want? Hope that makes sense. Trying to get the thought out at work while the shellac dries.
Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Thanks, Adon Jr. Well balanced. Good apanalysis. Appreciate you sharing that.
Indeed. Yeah, totally agree. Thanks to Norm. Thanks to you, Adon Jr., for contributing to today's show. Thank you, Tom, for inviting me to be a part of the family. I really enjoy doing this on a weekly basis. And thank you for being along for Daily Tech News Show. The show is made possible by our patrons, patreon.com/DTNS. DTNS has a live version called DTNS Live on YouTube and Twitch. You can find details on that and so much more at dailytechnewsshow.com. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.